Thank you, Maddie. Welcome to Johnson Consulting Conversations. And today we're talking about something every funeral home wrestles with, how to show up on social media in a way that actually feels like you and not a brand account, not like stock photo feed, but like real people serving the real community. And my guest today is Savannah Evanoff, Director of Social Media at Ring Ring Marketing. Savannah leads the social media strategy and content for funeral home clients across the country. She writes for funeral service publications. She leads workshops for funeral professionals on this exact topic. And before we dive in and I hand it off to Savannah, I want to give her flowers for just a second. If you've not seen her on LinkedIn, go follow her right now because she has some of the most interesting posts that I come across. Genuinely great photography, captions that make you stop scrolling, and you could just tell how much thought and care she makes every post feel human and authentic. So if anyone's qualified to teach us how to do this well, it is her. Savannah comes at this work with a journalism background rather than a traditional marketing one. And I think that's a big part of why her approach resonates the way that it does. And today we're going to cover three things: building content rhythm you can actually sustain, using Facebook to build trust long before a pre-arrangement conversation ever happens, and where AI fits, where it doesn't fit into funeral home marketing. Savannah, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. What an introduction. And like she said, I would love to have you guys on LinkedIn. I have a little bit too much fun on there, but hopefully you guys can come have some fun with me. And if after this, we don't get to questions and you have some, like, please feel free to reach out to me.
You have a lot of fun on LinkedIn. I really, really enjoy keeping up with you and seeing your wonderful photography and great content. Now, you come to social media through a journalism background rather than
Yes.
marketing. How does that background shape the way that you think about storytelling for a funeral home or a cemetery?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with wording because I do approach social media with storytelling in mind. Um, you know, you guys have probably heard the phrase like slow news day, huh? When you're reporting on something people maybe don't expect you to because there's just nothing else to report on. And there is some truth to that phrase. So when I worked at a newspaper, there were days we had tons to report on. There was breaking news, there was crime, there was features. And then there were days where we were like, oh my gosh, how are we going to fill a newspaper today? And I think it's those days that kind of taught me how to ask the right questions. And some of those questions are like, where can I find a story? How can I make this topic into a story? What concepts do I need to build a story from this? Because at the end of the day, just like with social media, journalists are also just competing for people's attention, competing for audience attention. And so I think I always approach social media in that same way. And when I tell like funeral homes and cemeteries to think of storytelling with their social media, a lot of them are like, well, I don't have a big story to tell. I don't have a dramatic story to tell all the time. And I think it's just important to remember that stories come in all shapes and sizes. So, for instance, if a funeral director wrote a social media post that said, at 6 a.m., I had coffee. 7 a.m., I answered emails. 8 a.m., I met with a family. That's a story, right? That's the story of their day. And so I think once you start thinking of a story, in a broadened scope, it really opens up like what you can do with social media.
I really like that journalism instinct, chasing the real story instead of a polished pitch, which
Yes.
seems like exactly what separates a social presence that connects one from maybe that just exists, perhaps. And I imagine that's why so many funeral homes struggle right out the gate. What is the biggest misconception that funeral homes or cemetery professionals have about social media before they start working with Ring Ring Marketing?
There's actually a couple misconceptions I think of right off the bat. I think the first one is obvious that they don't need social media,
Hmm.
or that people aren't interested in it. The reality is, most of us have at least one social media platform nowadays. And we're constantly using that to look up businesses, services, products, people. It's just kind of a go-to resource for us nowadays. So I think if you're a business, which if you're a funeral home or cemetery, you are a business, then I do think you should be active on social media. The second misconception would be that social media is like just for promoting yourself and just for selling. And social media, Welton Hogg, the founder and CEO of Ring Ring, him and I both say this. Social media is meant to be social. So if you kind of forget the social element of being on social media, then I think you've really lost sight of what it's for. So it's not just for all talking about yourself, promoting yourself constantly. There's a lot more to it than that. So I think that's a pretty big misconception.
That makes sense, and it probably explains why "I don't know what to post" is the phrase that you probably hear almost more than others. And
Yes.
speaking of when a funeral home may say that, what's the first question you ask them?
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends. If they're like, I don't know what to post today, right? I think the first question would be like, this is kind of a funny one, and maybe you wouldn't expect it, but like, what's the least interesting thing that happened to you this week? I think starting with that, we can talk about something mundane and talk about how that can become a post. But if they're talking in like a broader sense, like, I don't know what to post in general, I usually ask, like, what are you posting right now? And not just for your funeral home or cemetery, but for you personally. How do you use social media? You
Mhm.
know, I know funeral directors who on their personal social media page, they're posting everything. They're posting what they had for breakfast, what they had for lunch, what they said to their aunt last week, and that's all fine and great. But then on their funeral homes, their page, they're not posting anything, or vice versa. So I think just kind of figuring out like how they're approaching social media now, how they see social media and what it's for, can really get us, a head start on where their social media page is going to go.
I like that question that you posed. It takes the pressure off of coming up with content and it turns it into something more like organizing what's already there, which brings us to a term that you use quite often, content pillars. I
Oh,
want you to
yes.
walk us through what a content pillar actually looks like in practice for a funeral home.
Yeah, I can do that. So the content pillars, I actually wrote them down because there's five, and for some reason I always only remember four of the five. So you've got entertain, educate, promote, engage, and inspire. These are your different types of content pillars. Now, I actually encourage you, if you don't think these fit, you can come up with your own content pillars, but I do think these work really well for death care. I think, they cover a lot of bases. But I think they're very much more simple than you might think. So, for instance, in practice, if you were gonna do a post that was part of the educate content pillar, you could just tell people what pre-planning is. A lot of people don't even know what that word means, pre-planning or pre-arrangement, or they don't know what it's in reference to. I'm sure they can gauge by context what it means, but you can define that for people and educate them a little bit about what their options are for pre-arrangement. So I think that's, just kind of a simple example, but I think any post where you're sharing with someone some information about what options they have, I think that's a great educational post.
So once a firm has those pillars in place, the next challenge is obviously filling them. I think you had a great example, and we don't want it to feel forced, obviously. And you've talked about
Yeah.
turning in those everyday tasks into posts that actually land. But I want to talk about uh, maybe the grounds care, the staff moments, or community updates into post. What is an example, a really good example of what a boring daily task, or not say boring, daily task that would actually make a really good post that perhaps you've seen in the past that worked really well with the funeral home or cemetery?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's a fun one too, because I think it would surprise you just how many things can be posts, for not just funeral homes and cemeteries, but for anyone really. I kind of laugh because there was a day when I didn't have a post for LinkedIn. I just couldn't think of anything and was just tempted not to post, but it's really important to me that I post every day. That's my goal. And I had made a coffee that day, and the foam formed into the shape of Mickey Mouse. Took a photo of it, posted it, didn't really expect much, but it was one of my like highest engagement posts that I'd had that month. Something that I thought was so mundane, just a funny shape in my coffee. And I'm not saying that you should post about that for your funeral home or cemetery, but it just goes to show you how something you don't find interesting might be really interesting to someone else. For instance, like just about everything that you do at a funeral home or cemetery, that's new to somebody else. Before I worked for Ring Ring, I didn't interact with anyone in death care. I couldn't tell you what a day in their life looked like. So just about everything you do would have been fascinating to me. You could do a post about cleaning your funeral home because, you don't often think about that. Like the funeral home needs to be cleaned, someone's got to do it. You could have a funny story about cleaning each room and your biggest battle in each room. Maybe in one room it was the dust, in another room the floors were terrible. I know that's kind of a silly post, but it just goes to show you like you really can have fun with it. And it might be more interesting to people when you make it into a story, kind of like we talked about earlier.
I know that I get locked into those cleaning reels on Instagram.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I know. Seriously, I think that's a great reminder that content is already happening, and it just needs someone to notice it and to hit record on it. That's so important
Yes.
to capture it in the moment. But even with great raw material, consistency is where most small teams do fall apart. And I want to talk about Ring Ring for a second. How does Ring
Yeah.
Ring help a smaller funeral home team with no dedicated marketing person keep up a consistent posting rhythm without burning out?
Yeah, Ring Ring really does, not to toot our own horn, but Ring Ring does do a great job at that because we do offer a social media posting service that
Mhm.
keeps consistent posts coming out on your social media pages. And these cover all of those content pillars I mentioned earlier. So we have posts that are going out on your page that are designed to entertain, to educate, to promote, to engage, to inspire. Like all of those content pillars are covered. And that doesn't mean that you can't be active on your own social media. What it does is it kind of gives you a grace period to work on your own content while still remaining active on your profile. So let's say you do take my advice and you make a silly video about cleaning your funeral home. You're busy. Maybe it takes you 2 or 3 weeks to put that video together. That doesn't mean you want to ghost your Facebook for 2 to 3 weeks. And what we can do is be putting out those educational, inspirational, promotional posts in the background for you. That way you have time to work on that more curated content.
What does a realistic weekly or monthly posting cadence look like for a funeral home that maybe is just getting started?
Yeah, the advice I always give is typically, I should say, to start with one post a week. I think that's a very reasonable amount. It makes your page look very active, but starting with that, you can build from there. Maybe eventually you do get to a point where you're posting 3 times a week or every single day. But I would just say stick with a posting cadence that's realistic for your schedule. Like if you know yourself and you're like, I am not going to post every day for longer than a week or two, then start with just one post a week. And I always say like take a good hard look in the mirror. If you're honest and even once a week is too much, like do once a month. Like I know that sounds a little low and it is a little low. I encourage more, but what I will say is like be honest with yourself and what you have time for and start with that. But the real key is just making sure your page is active. And I think if you've seen a post within a month on a page, you feel pretty confident they're fairly active, not ghosting it for like 3 years,
Yeah, good point. And
which
I
some
think
businesses do.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I think once a week is reasonable. And I know you said once a month, and I think that's really good advice, even though it may not be ideal in the social media
Yes.
marketing
Yeah.
world. But to get in a habit of posting, to be more comfortable with it, it is certainly a good place to start. And starting is the hardest part. So
Yeah.
definitely, set a goal and commit to it. Now, I want to talk about the people side of this for just a second because
Yeah.
team members facing content as a category, it may be, something that people are nervous about and because they want to get it right. What are your
Yeah.
recommendations for team member introductions or behind the scenes content so it feels authentic rather than staged?
Man, that's tough. I do think there is a staged nature about social
Mm.
media, right? If you're creating content for social media, I think it's kind of inherent to it that it's a little bit staged. So I would say like just not putting pressure on yourself first of all. I think sometimes it's almost like now, right? Someone might tell me, Savannah, just be yourself. And then I panic and I'm like, who am I? Like, how do I be myself? And I think a lot of people do that with social media when they're on video. Like, I don't know what to do, even though
Mhm.
it's their career. They have plenty to talk about on camera or to do on camera. But so I would just say taking a little bit of the pressure off, not forcing yourself to do it when you don't want to. Not only that, but just not being scripted. Like if you're going to do a video, don't be reading off a teleprompter. I think those things come across a little obvious. And again, just not forcing it. Like I gosh, I keep going back to cleaning your funeral home. I guess I'm trying to send you guys a message to clean your funeral home. But let's say you were going to do a video. I'm not saying that you should force yourself into a cleaning day just so you can make this video. Get content as it comes to you organically. If you're planning on cleaning your funeral home that day, then maybe consider getting some content. Don't go out of your way for it because content is all around you, whether it's the Mickey Mouse foam in your coffee or if it's cleaning your funeral home or planting some flowers in a cemetery. Content is everywhere as long as you can, again, build a story out of it.
And if anyone watching is going to do a cleaning reel after today, please tag Johnson, me, Savannah. We would love to see it. Maybe we can get it to go viral. But on the flip side, seriously, of what works, I'd love to hear what doesn't work. What are some of those content mistakes that you see often?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think one of the biggest mistakes I see is just kind of constantly selling yourself and
Mhm.
talking about yourself. It's always we, me, just so focused on yourself. And that's really not what people care about. They want to know how you can help them, what you can do for them, why you're sharing with them. So I think just being a little bit less selfish on social media and making sure you're adding value.
Mm.
I always say before you hit post, ask yourself a couple questions. One of them would be, is this adding value in some way? And again, you can take that back to the content pillars. You can say, is this educating someone? Is this entertaining someone? And if it's not adding value, then that might be a time to say, hey, I don't know if I should post this, or maybe give it a little time, see what you can do to maybe, put it into one of those content pillars. And then I think obviously another question would be that I always encourage people to ask, am I going to offend anyone with this post? I highly recommend that, especially when you're posting from a funeral home or cemetery page. I don't see that mistake too often, luckily, but I do think it's important to just kind of ask myself, why am I posting? Because if you don't, then you start getting those low quality posts that you're probably going to regret or cringe at later. I know I have done that.
Now, back to those content pillars, how should a funeral home think about balancing the educational content with the more human, story-driven post?
Yeah, the key word there is balance. I mean, I think
Mm.
you need both, right? Like, let's say you're just constantly telling stories, but you're never really promoting yourself or sharing what you offer, then people might not be as inclined to go to your funeral home. And then vice versa. If you're always promoting yourself, but then you're never really sharing any like social proof, then people again might not be interested in your funeral home. So I think once you've given people a balance and shown them that you have multitudes and they can trust you, I think that's the key to kind of balancing those two types. I would say, 50-50 split. When it
50.
comes to my favorite content pillars, I think all of them could be even and you'd have a really perfect social media presence.
Yeah, perfect and well-rounded, most
Yes.
definitely. And you touched upon this just a second ago when something goes wrong online. It
Yeah.
could be a post in itself. It could be a comment thread that maybe it turns negative, or the post, of course, just lands totally wrong. What's your advice for handling it in that very moment?
I think the key, and again, this is something Welton and I both say all the time, but take a beat, take a step back, give yourself time to not react defensively or emotionally. I think we've all seen those people kind of battling it out in the comments or in the review section, and that's not a good look. So I would just say anytime that's, like you said, a post doesn't land, or something is being perceived negatively, take a step back and really think about the next step, because it's kind of a case by case basis, right? Like sometimes you can kind of turn it around by having a dialogue with them in the comment section. Sometimes you need to take it offline and you need to chat, via phone call or email. And other times it might be an appropriate time to take down a post and, announce a public apology. But I think it is very much on a case by case basis. But you can't make the right decision if you're reacting on emotion. So,
Mhm. And you may be surprised. You may gain a new loyal follower out of
yes.
this turmoil that happens. But that's a great pivot point. It leads us right into something that I know that you feel very strongly about, and that is the actual purpose of Facebook for a funeral home in regards to pre-arrangements. And I know that you've said that Facebook's real value for pre-arrangements is in the slow trust building rather than direct selling. Can you unpack what that looks like exactly from your perspective?
Yeah. So Facebook is all about playing the long game. People don't go on social media or Facebook, I mean, any platform really, looking for a funeral home or a cemetery or for pre-arrangement options. They just don't, right? You get on there for other reasons. But that doesn't mean death care doesn't belong on social media. It just means people aren't necessarily seeking out that information. So, I think when you're out there providing those content pillars we talked about, that's slowly building trust over time. And then when you're posting consistently, like we talked about, and you're posting the same type of material consistently, what that's doing is building trust with your audience. They know that you're going to show up for them in the same ways every time, and they can count on you. And then, by the time they've kind of, at this point, they've been educated about what pre-planning is. They've learned a little bit about your staff and your team. Maybe they've even engaged with you a little in the comment section, or maybe they haven't. Maybe they've just happened to scroll past your name a few times. That's when things really start clicking into place. You've started to build that trust over time, and then maybe they're ready to go ahead and reach out, take the next step.
I like that distinction. Now, I want to talk about the difference between a post that is meant to build trust and a post that is meant to sell.
Okay, yeah. Those are,
Mhm.
those are two very different types of posts. When you're trying to sell, you're saying, this is what we offer, this is what we have. Again, me, me, me. But when you're doing a post to build trust, you're saying, this is who we are, this is what we're about, these are our values, these are our principles, and you're allowing them to get to know you as a brand.
I always tell funeral directors and community outreach directors who are going through hospice training with me to learn more about the hospice philosophy and how to communicate with hospice professionals is to
Mm,
articulate your why, and check out
yes.
Simon Sinek on YouTube to understand the difference between the what, the how, and the why, and lead with your why. And it certainly makes a difference in face-to-face conversations, and it certainly can be a theme in as your foundation for creating posts on Facebook, and it can help build that long trust. And I want to talk about posts that are worth the spend and boosting, perhaps, and what's a
Yeah.
waste of money. Can you give us your opinion on that?
I love that question because I think a lot of people don't know when it's worth spending the money on boosting a post. And I have a couple of thoughts on that. I would say number one, quality. You obviously don't want to be boosting a low quality post. And Sometimes, that's subjective, obviously, but a post I would say that you put very little thought into should probably not be one that you're boosting. So I would start with quality. But the second thing is just having a post with purpose, like boosting a post that has a purpose. So for instance, we at Ring Ring boost a lot of posts, for pre-planning events like lunch and learns. And that's a great post to boost because we know exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get signups for this lunch and learn. So it has a very clear purpose. We know what it's trying to do. And I think those are the best posts to boost are ones where you have a clear purpose.
I love that phrasing, post with a purpose. I hope
Yes.
everyone remembers that. That is a great phrase. And how do you measure whether a trust building strategy is working and if it's driving immediate leads or not?
Yeah, especially in death care, I really do encourage people to look at kind of the small wins. Like, is my following increasing? Are my posts getting a little bit more engagement? Am I hearing more about my social media when I'm in person with people?
Hmm.
There's so many times when like no one engaged with your post and you kind of thought it didn't perform well, but then you'll be out and about and someone will be like, "Oh, I saw your post." Just like today, you, Lacey, mentioned you saw my post about getting my hair done yesterday. I might not have known that you even saw that post, but you shared it, with me live here. And I think that does happen in real time for funeral homes and cemeteries a lot when they're engaging with the community. So I think it's just looking for those kind of small signs that things are working, trust is building, like, oh, I've heard of your funeral home, or I think I saw you cross my LinkedIn the other day. Those types of things are small ways to say, okay, like this is working, like my showing up is paying off.
And I always tell people not to get or not to take it personally if you don't get a ton of likes on
Yes.
something because I saw your haircut post. I honestly, I can't remember if I liked it. I hope I did, but I was probably,
Yeah, you're
multitasking.
scrolling. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
scrolling and I'm going fast. And so, but I was glad I mentioned it and giving you the verbal like
Yes,
essentially. But
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That's another sign, and I always tell people we're in the age of the lurker, which
that's
Lacey, I
right.
think Lacey Lurker, I think that's a nice alliteration there. But she was lurking and she didn't like my post, but it doesn't mean she didn't see it. Doesn't mean she didn't like it, personally. And I think that's true for a lot of people. They just scroll and they don't engage. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm in the habit of just liking just about everything I see. I guess maybe it's coming from a social media manager standpoint because I always want people to get good engagement. But I think there's a lot of funeral homes that get 0 likes, get 1 like, and I always tell them that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile posting. Like organic social media is tough, and if you're not putting some money behind it, I mean it's an uphill battle, but it doesn't mean it's not worth showing up.
Are there any specific types of posts that you've seen directly influence a family's decision to choose one funeral home over another?
Yeah, I would say the posts that most influence that are the posts that involve your staff or
Hmm.
yourself, the people who work at your funeral home, because, you know, at the end of the day, there could be a funeral home or cemetery in your area. The price points are roughly the same, locations roughly the same. The demographics you're trying to reach maybe overlap quite a bit. But the difference maker is really the people. Who is going to be arranging the service with you? Who's going to be, taking care of your loved one's remains? Those are the things people really care about. And so it's those posts where they're like getting to know the people that they're actually going to be working with that I think make the biggest difference in, choosing one funeral home or cemetery over a different one.
I would think that there would be considerably more likes or comments on those very personal posts when it
Yes.
comes to featuring team members and thinking about engagement as far as content or I'm sorry, comments and shares and
Yeah.
reactions as a signal versus then just posting and moving on.
Yeah, definitely. You see a lot more engagement with the team, anything highlighting your staff members' posts, or just like we talked about earlier, telling a personal story because people connect with that. And it's
Mhm.
really that like human connection that we're looking for on social media. Like the promotional posts, I think, are an important part of the process, but I think, again, without those kind of like humanizing it, without saying there is a face behind this funeral home, there are real humans that work here. I think without that, then people are missing that opportunity to connect with you.
Now, I want to shift gears and I want to talk about AI. We had Welton on,
Yeah.
and he had a lot of engagement in the chat feature
Ooh,
of people
okay.
asking questions about AI. He gave great advice, especially on using AI to save time. And so, of course, funeral service is a profession that is based on trust and human connection. And so there is some hesitation in using
Yeah.
AI. What are some of the non-negotiables that you tell clients about disclosures when AI is involved with their content?
Yeah, that is such a hot topic right now for sure. I think it kind of depends, I guess, where you're using AI, but I will say if we're talking strictly on social media, I will say I think it's really important to stay up to date on the different
Mhm.
platforms' policies regarding AI because some of them do require, especially when it's an AI image, that you need to be transparent about that. You need to label it as AI generated. Um, so I would just say, and that's constantly changing, and it's probably going to keep changing with the way AI is evolving. So I would just say, for social media purposes, staying up to date on the requirements of those platforms so that you're not violating their policy and you don't end up getting kicked off social media for that. But I always recommend transparency. I mean, I think if you're using AI for something that you would be embarrassed to share, you know what I mean, then maybe you should be reevaluating whether you're using AI for that. But as far as funeral homes go, I would also say I just strongly encourage human oversight.
Mhm.
One of our policies at Ring Ring, obviously, Welton, he's amazing with AI. He truly is like an AI expert. He's like my go-to resource. And but we still, no matter what we use AI for, we still always have human oversight, period. Like that's just across the board, everything we do at Ring Ring, down to brainstorming. You know what I mean? There's always human oversight. And I think with death care, there has to be human oversight. That's,
Well, I think the AI images and graphics came on really strong and really fast
oh my gosh, yes.
across all platforms. So if there was ever a time to invest in like real authentic photography and using that, I think you would get noticed
I
amongst
agree.
all of the AI images that are out there. So I would definitely take the opportunity where almost everything it looks like from some perspectives that it's all AI. Uh, drop in your authentic ones, and you may just get someone who's lurking to actually stop and take a look at that. But I want to talk about AI missteps. Can you give us an
Yeah.
example of what should have been avoided and needed better human oversight, something that may have happened in this industry?
Yeah, I'll tell you one. This is from a personal standpoint, but I will say one misstep would just be not fact checking.
Mm.
So, I kind of think we think of AI as like this all-knowing like intelligence and it truly isn't. Even with AI having access to the internet, it is actually wild to me how much AI gets wrong. This example is not specifically from death care, though maybe loosely connected, but there was, gosh, I cannot remember who it was, but it was an actress who died last year. And I was working on a post about this with AI, and AI was convinced that this person was still alive and was, trying to convince me. And I pulled up all of these news sources and I said, I think, this person has died. And AI then was like, oh, I've been corrected. This person has passed away. And um, so I think had I posted that or trusted AI with that information, it would have been wrong. So I think it's really critical that we're constantly fact checking the information that AI is giving you. Don't just take everything it says as gospel.
How do you draw the line between using AI to draft or brainstorm versus using AI to speak in a family's voice or a firm's voice on sensitive topics?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a bit subjective, but I think you really need to be smart about it. Use your own sense of discernment, right? When you think about drawing a line, let's say a close friend of mine texted me, something very personal that was going wrong in their life. They're just having a bad day, they're venting. And if I sent them an AI written response, I think that would be a little bit insensitive. I think, that wouldn't be the appropriate place to use AI. So I think it comes down to that a little bit where you're just discerning for yourself. Is this an appropriate time for me to be using AI? Why or
Mhm.
why not? And if it is an appropriate time, and there are times I think it is okay, I constantly use AI to write emails. In those cases, I still advise the human oversight, right? I've never sent an email without reading it. Even if AI wrote it, it doesn't mean I have not looked it over and said, okay, there's been times I've had ChatGPT write me an email and it'll put some wild sentence in there like, "Hey Lacey, it was such a delight to join you for this webinar." I probably would never say that. I would never say it was such a delight to join you. I would, say, "I had a really great time, Lacey. Thanks so much for inviting me." So I think, again, it just comes down to kind of discerning for yourself. Does using AI right now align with my values and my principles? And then if it does, then again using that human oversight. So that's kind of where I draw the line. But it is tough. I mean, I think we're all grappling with that, honestly. I mean, it's getting so advanced.
I keep thinking about a funny reel on Instagram that I saw where the person working, sending the email, copied and pasted directly from AI, but accidentally left in his portion that said, "Can you dumb this down for me?" So it sounds
Oh,
more
yeah.
like my voice. But yeah, you're right. Spending time to make it uniquely your own from your authentic voice will make all the difference. And you just never know how many AI generated emails that person is already getting, and the one that has the real
Yeah.
human voice is going to stand out in a big way. And as AI tools get more sophisticated, what do you think will always require a human touch in this profession's marketing?
I mean, empathy, compassion, that's something AI can't replace. AI doesn't have feelings. AI doesn't have a lifetime's worth of experiences to draw from. I think that can't be replaced. AI is a robot. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't understand them. Um, so I think that's one thing that'll never be replaced, no matter what you use AI for.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Well, Salvana, this has been a very grounding conversation in the best sense of that word. And I'm going to check in with Maddie to see if we have any questions in the chat feature.
Why, indeed we do. So starting from the very top,
Oh,
someone
wow.
asked, could you repeat those pillars, please?
They're really putting me on the spot with that. Yes, entertain, educate, promote, engage, and inspire.
Awesome. I'm sure that Lacey will include that in the blog too for follow-up for anybody.
Yeah, and those are
Oh,
kind of the standard content pillars. So if you like just Google it, those are likely to come up pretty quickly.
also then another question that we have, do you post different things on each platform or do you use the same content across all social media accounts?
I love that question. I think a lot of it depends on what you have time for, right? I think, again, you have to be realistic. Like, do you have time to come up with content for every different platform? And some people, like me, who apparently have too much time on my hands, like, yeah, we do. But some people really don't. And I don't have any issue with cross posting. I think, if anything, that's just going to help with alignment of your brand. And typically, you're going to have different audiences on different platforms as well. So, even it doesn't mean the same person is seeing your content three different times, right? You may have different people seeing the same content. So, I think that's kind of a personal choice. Like, yeah, it's amazing if you can design separate content for like design for each platform. That's sure, that's the ideal scenario, but does everyone really have time for that? Probably not. So, I think in the case where you've got time to come up with one post, yeah, cross post it, put it on all the platforms, full send.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, piggyback it. All right, let's see here. Another one we have. How important is it to participate in trends?
Um, you know, not that important, honestly. Like I think it just kind of depends on your goal. What I always say with trends is don't follow a trend if it doesn't align with your brand, right? There's a lot of trending, like trending audios, trending memes and things that there's just like I've tried with Ring Ring and I'm just like there is no earthly way for me to connect this trend to Ring Ring. I just can't. And if I did, I would really be forcing it and I think it would kind of lose the integrity of the trend itself. Um, so I think it's fun to participate in trends, and I think if it comes really naturally, like if you can find a way for the trend to fit within, a couple minutes, then you've probably got a good, participation strategy. But if not, skip it and don't feel bad about it later.
Don't force the trend.
Yes, exactly. Well, have you ever seen, I'll say, have you ever seen those brands that it's like every single post they do is a trend? Like every single one. Like honestly, I kind of find it a little bit obnoxious. And I think part of that is because it's missing that balance we've talked about with the content pillars. Like it just feels like, man, they're just like trying too hard. And I feel like I'm not really getting to know who they are as a brand. If you're always following a trend, do you really like have your own brand identity?
That's a good
Whoa.
point.
I know.
Those are very wise words. Yeah, very wise.
I can't believe I just thought of them. Yeah, on the spot.
One more question that we have. What are your thoughts on regular posts like this person did Myth Busting Monday for a few
Ooh.
months, and it seemed to increase their following?
Oh my gosh, I love a good series. Like, and I have to agree from my experience, like anytime I've done a series, it's always outperformed like some of the day-to-day posting. I absolutely love that idea. That's great. And the best part about that is you're not like always trying to reinvent the wheel. Like if it's like what did you say it was called? Mythbuster Monday?
Mhm.
That's such a cute idea because then every single Monday you've already got a built-in post. Like that's such a great idea. Yeah, I really love a good series. Anytime you can find an excuse for a series, I say do it.
Check out Mr. Calhoun in Ohio and his Hey, Mr. Calhoun series. It's really good. All
Oh, I
about
want to
funeral
see it.
service. It's excellent.
I love that. I
Any-
was doing on my LinkedIn, I was doing Fashion Fridays for a while. I think I actually feel like I kind of ran out of wardrobe and that's why we've taken a little
oh,
hiatus. But I'll be back. I'll be back with more clothes. It's an excuse to shop, so.
that's right.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say. Like, oh, I mean, you have to. You just have to get more clothes then.
Like, oh no, yeah.
All right, let's see here. All right, we have something. It looks like are the posts Ring Ring puts out unique to the website or generic to everybody? I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that one either. Um, they said, are the posts that we put out unique to our website?
Hmm.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that. Um, yeah, we may have to skip that one. Do you know what that means, Lacey? I'm like,
I don't know. I don't know if it's missing a word in the question or
Right.
we need a little bit clarification on that one.
yeah, we can come back to that if they
Yeah.
clarify. Yeah.
Let's see here. I think though that was maybe the last one. It looks like someone else mentioned though the series that they utilized. Somebody else did a Thoughtful Thursday.
Oh, love
Oh, I like
that.
that.
That's super
That's
fun.
great.
I
That is
think
fun.
too, if you can come up with a series that's like, I hate to say it, but like easy, like something, you know what I mean, that like recurs a lot, like a thoughtful Thursday is great, right? Because we're full of thoughts, so you can always come up with something to say on a thoughtful Thursday. I'm like, so try to think of something that's highly like repeatable, not something where you're just gonna like run out of material quickly.
Gotcha. Let's see. It looks like somebody.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see they changed the question. Yeah. I think they're asking if Ring Ring social media postings are curated for their organization. And yes, absolutely they are. Yeah, we do curate them for the organization. And we also take it pretty seriously when we have a new client, like getting to know their brand. And that's something we come back to throughout, is just making sure we understand their brand, their principle, their missions, their USPs, which are their unique selling points. So what makes them stand out from their competitors? And we do use that for their social media, especially when it comes to like boosted posts as well. That's something that's very important to us.
Absolutely. Let's see here. It looks like the last two things we have. What about captions and being authentic using empathetic language?
Can you repeat that?
What about captions and being authentic slash using empathetic language? They sound like two separate things.
Well, empathy is my favorite word. So I like empathetic language.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. It speaks from the heart. If you're an empathetic person, you speak in an empathetic way, and that would be your caption. And that's true to the person or the business that it represents. How do you feel, Savannah?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we definitely want to aim for that. I mean, I think empathy is incredibly important to death care. I mean, we all can agree on that, I think. So, and then I think when it comes to captions, obviously you want to maintain authenticity. So I think, and again, like if you're using AI to do that, I think that human oversight piece comes into play, right? Because AI doesn't feel empathy, you do. So I think, if you're going to use AI to create like a caption or something, I would encourage you to like look it over and make sure the phrasing is something you would actually say. And that really is true to your voice and again, your brand's principles and values.
The equation I teach the students at Warsham in Fundamentals of Customer Service: credibility plus empathy equals trust.
Love it. And that's exactly right.
Got the formula down from Lacey first. All right.
I'm good at math.
I will say captions, man, they can be the bane of our existence, you know? Do you ever have a picture and you're just like, I have no idea what to write in this caption? I think that's why a lot of people are turning to AI for help.
Looks like last thing that we have, we face many sensitive topics when it comes to holidays. For example, National Bereavement Parents Awareness Month. Do you think it is worth it to educate on those topics, as I find it can sometimes come off as insensitive?
That's a great question. Um, I mean, I personally do think it's worthwhile, yes. Like, I think anytime, and I think this person asked it the exact right way. Like, she said, educate. She used that in her actual thing. Like, they're not trying to patronize, they're not trying to offend. Like, they really are trying to educate. And I think if your purpose behind the post is to educate, then it will come off as educational. Again, it's that post with purpose coming back to us. Um, I think as long as your kind of quote unquote heart is in the right place, I think the post will come off as it should. Yeah, what do you think about that, Lacey?
Yeah, so if you're feeling unsure on what direction to go in, or if you should not do it at all, check out what hospice is posting. It could be
Mm,
local hospices or nationally recognized hospice organizations and other funeral homes. What are they posting on those specific holidays? Perhaps what they did earlier in 2026, go back to 2025, even go back to 2024, and gather some inspiration. Look at the comments, look at the likes. Was it well received? And that's a really good
true.
starting point to do do that research to get inspired, and it may help you with your confidence and moving forward and posting something that is empathetic and respectful.
Yeah, what I will say is if you're looking at a post and you're questioning whether it's going to offend someone, then I think that could be your sign not to post. I think you should feel confident hitting post.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
Agreed.
Great question.
yeah.
Looks like we got one more just came in here. What about sharing partner organizations posts like our local florist?
Love it. Welton and I are both big proponents of sharing community organizations posts. That's the thing about social media is it's reciprocal, right? I get a lot of people who say like, I don't get any likes or comments or shares on my post. I'm just not getting any engagement. And I'm like, well, are you liking, commenting, and sharing on other people's posts? Because if you're not, you know what I mean? There's no reason for them to reciprocate that. So I strongly recommend sharing posts and it's great content as well. Again, I have a goal to post every single day on LinkedIn, and there have been days when I'm just like, I got nothing. Like, I'm just tapped out. And that's a great opportunity to say, is there a much higher quality post that someone else did that I can share, and give a bigger audience to and kind of develop that rapport with them as well. So I think that's a great idea. I would just make sure that's not all of your posts. Like, not every post you should do should be reposting someone else's content. You really need to have a good mix of original content and then shared content.
All right. I mean, I agree 100%. I am with you on that. I feel like, you're right. Like if there's a slow day, like, hey, let's go and shout out somebody else. Let's see what someone else has got going on here. Yeah.
Or something you think your audience would care about,
Yeah.
Like, hey, if there's a new restaurant in town, like your audience might want to know that. I think that's a great thing to share. Like, why not?
And I
All
can't
right.
believe that you would miss a day on LinkedIn, Savannah.
You'll
You are
see
very
this
consistent.
this past weekend I was tapped out and I reposted a sports post actually that I liked and yeah, it was great. That was my post for the day. I got a little break.
Well, with that, I will pass it on back over to Lacey to close out the show.
Thank you, Maddie. And for anyone that is maybe feeling overwhelmed when it comes to social media, just remember that it's about paying attention to what's already true about your funeral home and about your community and having the courage and the confidence to truly let that be enough. And for everyone watching, go find Savannah on LinkedIn and see exactly what human and authentic looks like in practice every day, because she makes it a goal to post every single day. And we appreciate that, Savannah. So thank you for being with us this afternoon. We truly appreciate you sharing your expertise with our audience. And thank you to all of you for joining Johnson Consulting Conversations. And before we go, I want you to save the date for September the 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be sitting down with Vince Roberge, our senior business consultant here at Johnson Consulting Group, to talk about the upcoming leadership and management program. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Savannah. And thanks to all of you for attending.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Lacey and Johnson Consulting. And I'm gonna mark my calendar. I'm gonna be there for that one.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Maddie.